Welcome back to episode 34 of Oneself. My name is Stephen Maher. With me today, with me always, is Adam Bartleman. Adam, thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, brother. Folks, what we kind of want to touch upon today is something I think that Adam and I are both guilty of, but with good intentions, in terms of just trying to help people get better. And it's like, how do you do that? Right? Like, how do you change hearts and minds truly? And I think, thinking about this over the past couple weeks, you don't tell people what to think or what to do because then people like kind of retreat or get entrenched in their own views and like, whoa, 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 don't tell me what to do, right? Which I feel that too, right? I've kind of got that mischievous spirit in me. I'm like, don't tell me what to think or do. But I think a good way to do that is to ask questions, and to just pose things, right? And then hopefully people can arrive to those conclusions on their own, right? Like if you just get the brains moving, right? You just get the thoughts percolating. And also as well, we've touched upon this in past episodes, but just like being the best example for yourself that you can be. Because people watch, right? A lot of times they're in their own heads, but they often are watching as well. I'm an observer of human behavior. Adam is as well. And when you see something going well or going wrong, I definitely clock that. And I'm like, either I want to be more like that or I'm not going to do that, right? Humans are really good at following the paths of other people, and the first person through the door, the first person building that path, oftentimes they take some flack, unfortunately, such as life, right? They take kind of the brunt of it, but then they provide a blueprint for people that couldn't have envisioned what that person envisioned beforehand. And that's a beautiful thing. Like I have a lot of respect for, the visionaries, the pioneers, in this world, especially when
Yes.
it's good things. Yeah, when it's really good things. And something else I want to touch upon in this episode as well is just kind of my experience, in the effort of getting better. And this might be a hot take there, Adam, as well, but I want to touch upon it, when we have a chance. When it comes to therapy, right? And some of my experience in that realm, it's not that it was like necessarily negative, but I wouldn't view it as an overwhelming positive. Number one, it was really expensive, for me to do that. And it's like, that's just an economic barrier for a lot of people. It's like, okay, if we want to help people, if we want to help, again, hearts and minds, but there's this built-in layer of like this economic barrier for a lot of people, that was expensive for me. So like that was my one thing with like, again, trying to change hearts and minds and trying to get people aware of like the mental health side of stuff. And I was like, I didn't love that. I didn't love that I was like paying someone to care about me as well. Like not that, again, if you've gotten benefits out of therapy, amazing. Like all I want is for people to, just get back in shape, right? Trying to just get better every day. But I kind of felt like this weird transaction where it's like I'm paying you to care about me, but then like, the timer's up and I'm like, all right, bye. It just kind of seems like abrupt and like kind of like, yeah, you're literally paying someone to care about you. It's like whether or not they actually do is like depends on the person, right? But hopefully they do, right? Like hopefully they're not just taking your money. But that transaction just kind of felt a little hollow to me. And again, I'm not like knocking it, but I'm just trying to say like what, like how are ways that we can build this within our own relationships, within our own communities, like communication without judgment in order to resolve, or journaling, or just like all these different ways to get your thoughts out that I'm like I've found more benefit from. And and again, the relationships that you discern, right? And opening up your heart, like letting your walls down and being super vulnerable with people that you could trust, instead of like, again, just like another service that you're paying for, because I feel like that's a lot, right? Like everything's trying to just, pound of flesh, right? Especially in America, it's like, how can you make anything a product, right? Like your thoughts and your feelings. Like, it's like, how can you make that a product? You know what I mean? To sell it to you. So it's like, again, I'm not knocking it. I know there's amazing people out there doing amazing work, but that was just my personal experience and like kind of some of the things that I have a bone to pick with. And again, all of this in the pursuit of getting better. And how do we do that? So yeah, man, those are my personal thoughts on today. And any opening thoughts on that, my friend?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot there. And yeah, with the pursuit of getting better in such an interesting climate. So like looping in. looping in the therapy model and the fact that that is even a model or a path to take in our society. Maybe the fact that that is the case is the result of a sick society. The fact that we don't have that support just within our families and our immediate communities. The fact that we do have to have an exchange of energy in the form of money just to feel safe enough to go and open up in that way. We have to have that awareness that there's this patient practitioner confidentiality agreement, as long as there's no harm going to come to anyone. Like this is guaranteed by law to be private. It's like this is the only space where we feel safe to open up, and it's very official because there's been money exchanged, and like this, it's all very it's all just very reminiscent of the culture that is built up to that point. It kind of makes sense, right? Like that's how we would be expressing ourselves in this Western, now globalized culture that we have. It's a clear cause and effect, at least from my perspective. But yeah, so just like anything ego based, any human production right now, any human creation right now, it's obviously going to have flaws. There's going to be some good, some bad. Yeah, to use the example of therapists, there are some amazing ones out there, some pretty highly realized beings who are able to truly guide people in a very productive way. And there are also some that are expressing themselves at a lesser level than that. And that's where, it gets kind of interesting, and navigating that space. And just like anything, someone trying to find a therapist, someone trying to find a coach of any kind, someone trying to find, yeah, any sort of guidance. It really behooves one to do the research and be able to tune into one's own intuition in making the choice to move forward with a relationship with someone like that. Because yeah, there are some people who are worth their salt, from the perspective of what they can offer, and some that maybe less so. And it's interesting in that the majority of the profession, say if we're talking like psychotherapy, well, I mean, I guess I would say, first of all, we got to realize that's like very closely associated with our sort of like the medical model that we have in our society, which is a for-profit situation as well. So there are going to be, some inherent problems there. If you need to be the client, if you need the therapist to be the therapist in order for this for this dance to go on, then recognize that the therapist needs you to be the client in order for that dance to go on, in order for that role to be fulfilled. As I've heard anecdotally, and then also personally in my own experience, can see sometimes when someone isn't super invested in getting their patients better, and whether that's a subconscious thing or not, or intentional, doesn't matter, because obviously it changes over the different cases. But ultimately, there can be those cases where the therapist maybe unknowingly is more interested in creating a repeat customer, just like the medical profession, than getting someone truly better to a place where they don't need therapy. And I mean, from my perspective, in my opinion, from the perspective of a coach or a therapist or something, it's like the goal should be to get your client to the place where they don't need you anymore, so that they aren't feeling like they need you anymore, because ultimately everything that we need is within. So yeah, if someone is guiding, then that I believe should be the utmost goal, is like not to have this person become into therapy for their entire lives, but to get to a place of not needing it anymore, not feeling they need it anymore, and recognizing though that if we're looking at that from the perspective of like, okay, what does that mean to like really get to like the highest place that we can with our lives and our mental health, is like, in my opinion, moving in the direction of some form of, or some degree of self-realization, and at least getting on the path toward that in order to become a master of oneself and a master of one's life. And I think it's important to recognize that a therapist, we have perhaps pedestalized that position just like we have doctors, in the medical profession, and just kind of respecting the letters that come after one's name, the pieces of paper that they've been issued by educational institutions, rather than the actual lived experience of that person. So in the case of a therapist, they can really only walk you as far down the path as they have gone themselves. If we're talking about real trauma healing, self-development, self-realization, like, and this is just, I mean, as far as I can see, is just like a simple fact. Someone can only take you as far as they have gone, right? Like, just use the analogy of like a guide. Like, if you're going to hire a guide to take you up a mountain, you probably want to hire a guide that has gone up that mountain before, not somebody who's gone halfway and then can just tell you about it because they read about the rest of it in books. Because if that's the case, if a therapist is only going to take you as far as they've gone themselves, and then any further, they're just they're only repeating the models that they've learned in school, that they have seen might fit the situation, then they're just taking your models that you were working with before, whatever thought loops you've been stuck in, whatever sort of pathologies, neuroses someone has been stuck with, and just replacing them with new thought models that are just another thought pattern. So if we're going into a deeper state of self-realization, like that might be good, that might be better than what one was working with before, sort of in the way that like an alcoholic, like a raging alcoholic who gives up that addiction and now goes to AA every day and drinks 10 cups of coffee, might be seen as that's the lesser of two evils. It might be better than what they were doing before, but it's still perhaps not getting at the trauma underneath that was creating those behaviors. So if someone's going to therapy and they're just getting some new practices to work with, but they're not actually getting at the trauma underneath that has been fueling all of those negative thought loops before, because that therapist isn't able to take them there because they haven't actually done that deep of work. That's where a big block exists in that system, as far as I see. So I know I said a lot of stuff there, but like, summing it up, essentially, like, when we're looking for a therapist or a coach or anything like that, really trying to find somebody who is walking the walk, who is really living it and really being the example, and not someone who is just regurgitating stuff that they have learned. Which, again, as I said, if that stuff that's being regurgitated is replacing the negative loops that one has been in, that's, just like the alcoholic who's replacing the alcohol with, a daily AA visit and coffee and cigarettes. Like, it might be better than what was going on before, but depending on how deep we want to go and getting to a place of true inner peace and happiness, it might not be the best bet for you unless you have found that therapist, that coach, that whatever lifestyle guide, whatever you want to call it, that is actually living that example, is really being it.
Yeah, brother. I got a couple thoughts. We always go back to our Krishnamurti quote where it's like, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. I think,
Yeah.
well, before we hopped on, you and I touched upon this where it's like, North America is profoundly sick when it comes to like the mental health, right? So I love that there are people like working at these things, but I think it's deeper than just going to, yeah, like a therapy session. And again, especially when you're introducing drugs, if a psychiatrist, right? Like, if someone's prescribing you stuff, like maybe that'll benefit you. But if you're getting ADHD meds for the brain to like focus on, you know, sitting at a computer all day, when really what humans are built for is like, hunting and foraging, and it's just like, you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole sort
Yeah.
of thing. It's like, nothing's wrong with you, right? Again, you're just not well adjusted to a sick society,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And, I'll extend this to, other examples. And I know very smart doctors, but when their training is just a prescription pad, right? When they're just trained to throw drugs at the problem, like when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail sort of thing,
Yeah.
right? And I've had these conversations with doctors, and again, profoundly smart people, very good at in their training. But I'm like, no one's talked about nutrition when it comes to like it's just like, here's some different prescriptions that'll help treat whatever, the symptoms are. But it's like, what about, again, the underlying problem, which is most food, where in my country, it's poison. It's like most of it's junk, preservatives, no one's eating whole foods, fruit, veggies, and, or, even the things that historically are good, right? Which is, bread with simple ingredients is not necessarily a bad thing. But, when you put a million different ingredients and preservatives in it and, it doesn't go moldy after 6 months, it's like, that's, sums up there, right?
Yeah.
And all that to say, it's just, how we're treating the problem of the profoundly sick, again, profoundly sick mental illness, like across the country, across North America, I just think is like a little warped. And I'm not saying that the people trying to do those things, like, again, like you said, that these therapists, like, they're wrong or whatever. But it's just like, again, we're just posing questions, y'all, and we're just like, is this how we should be going about it? And
Mhm.
I don't think so. Like, I don't think so. I'm not saying it necessarily hurts, but I don't think it's addressing the entire problem, which is, the broader things at large, which is that, we're sick, y'all. We're sick. And to numb ourselves, if a psychiatrist is prescribing drugs or a
Mm.
doctor is prescribing, things, it's like to numb ourselves to the reality isn't addressing the problem. We're just masking it,
Yeah.
and that's not a solution, right? That's just kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
And like you said, Adam, too, where it's, if that person hasn't gone down that to do that internal work as well, and they're like, oh, like, here's just like a drug. I'm like, what? Like, that's not, is that the best
Mhm.
way? Or are you truly solving that person's problem? Or, truly addressing that, if you're just, zumbing someone out or, numbing someone out on like Zoloft or something, it's like,
Yeah.
I don't think that's the way, man. I don't think that's the way. And people are like, well, what do you propose? Right. Again, we always say, how do you find truth in this world when there's so much smoke and mirrors? It's like, looking inward, and that takes a lot of accountability, right? And it's not like
Mhm.
you'll have an immediate fix in a day. Like, this is like daily work, daily integrations, daily things that, hopefully make you feel better in a legitimate way, which, going for walks, sunlight, breathing
Mm.
deeply, good food. Like I always say, it's like, you add all that up and it's a lot of work. Like, trust me, I get it. But, yeah, man, any thoughts on what I just,
Yeah.
I touched upon a
Well,
lot. I get it, but
yeah, well, and I guess trying to frame it in the like like posing a question is like, do what do people think would be the quickest solution, or like the most effective solution? Because so this, interesting dance we're trying to do here to have this conversation, to like frame it and asking questions, but like also sharing our opinions. So this is an ongoing process, trying to figure it out. But because like if I'm looking at that, see I see that we're really addicted to quick fixes, as we've discussed before, and you just mentioned. Really, really like ego perspective, which is like, I don't really care about tomorrow. I just care about how I'm feeling right now, which is like, but then also we're like worrying about tomorrow in the past because we're like ultimately not present, but also very concerned with what is presently what we're feeling. And for the most part, trying to avoid it. Right, so something like using the example of the prescription of psychiatric drugs, right? Like there's nothing inherently right or wrong about anything. So if we look at just what is it we're trying to do. If we're trying to just put out a fire right now, and just diminish the flames rather than figuring out what was actually causing it to start in the first place, then sure, that can be a great solution if that's what you're trying to do. Again, understanding like all of life is really like is really determined by what are we trying to do? What am I trying to how am I trying to express myself? How am I trying to define myself? If I'm just trying to make it through the day, then yeah, then some prescription drugs and some beers at the end of the day, and distracting myself by watching, several hours of TV, then like that makes sense. But if I'm trying to make tomorrow better, if I'm trying to make right now better and tomorrow better, and really understanding that this game of a human life is not about a single human life. It's one of infinite incarnations because we're on the journey of a soul here rather than one finite life. Then maybe I'm going to think a little bit more long term. And I could see something like psychiatric drugs as a way to throw like someone, like the plant medicine example as well. It's like it's a way to throw somebody a life preserver when they're out in the middle of the lake and they're drowning. It might be some way, it might be a way for that person to, grab hold of something, catch their breath, and see the direction of the shore, so they know how to start, so they know in which way to start swimming. But just like plant medicines, those psychiatric drugs are not going to move your arms and legs for you. They're not going to get you back to the shore. You have to do that work yourself. You have to sit in the fire, right? You can't just run away from it. You have to sit in it and feel it. And this is like, in our paradigm up to this point, why suffering has been basically a prerequisite for coming to awareness, because this is what pushes us to see through the illusion, to see through the nonsense of this profoundly sick society. So it's not that those things don't have their place, so that they can't have their place. Because I mean, as I just kind of alluded to, I could make the argument that they're essentially the same thing, as in a similar class to plant medicines, in that they can give you a moment to come up and catch your breath. I would advocate more strongly for plant medicines done, like obviously in wherever they're legal in the settings, go to South America or whatever. But um, just to throw that in, but ultimately, it's when and in the same way as plant medicines, it's like if we come to depend on those things, then we get stuck. That was my experience. I was prescribed actually Zoloft. Actually, you mentioned, I was prescribed that as a 7-year-old, and was told that I had to take it for my entire life. And it's like, yeah, doesn't that model just fit that for profit motivation? What does that do? Like, kept me numbed out, kept me, as far as I see through my own experience, set me up for an alcohol addiction, and didn't allow me to develop emotionally until later in life, when I made the decision to come off of it myself without doctor supervision. Again, not recommending that, but that's what happened. That's what I did. And that's when my whole life started to change for the better. And just to throw it in there, not that I'm recommending that anyone do that without doctor supervision, but when I did it, I came off very, very slowly. I weaned myself off very, very slowly. So anyway, yeah, those things, they can have value, but again, it's always just about like anything else in life. It's the energy behind it. What are we trying to do with it? Are you trying to use this as a solution for the rest of your life, or are you trying to, like with therapy or prescription drugs or plant medicines, whatever it is, whatever your new thing is it going to become the new crutch, or is it going to just be a short-term thing to allow you to open yourself, to feel safe inside, to feel safe enough inside to open yourself to a deeper awareness, in which you can realize that we are the creators of our love and happiness and inner peace? Because that's how I see it. Anyway, that's my opinion. So I would just pose the question, like, I would pose the question to people, like, what do you think it is we're here to do? What is it? What is the point of our experience here? And is it to just make it through the day by, like, taking some prescription drugs and distracting ourselves with screens and so, social media and stuff? It's like, if you feel that that's the purpose of your existence, is to just survive, then yeah, then play that game, like go on that trip and ride as long as you can and see where it takes you, and until you come to make a different choice. So it's like, or do you see your purpose here, as a human being? Like, do you see your purpose being more to thrive and to experience the depth of your being and connection with other people and nature and all of existence? Because at least from my perspective, it doesn't seem like numbing out with sugar, alcohol, prescription drugs, like watching several hours of television a day. Like, numbing out in that way, I don't think personally will get you there. But that's the question I would ask for people, is like, what is it you're trying to do, and what is it you believe life is all about? What is it you believe your existence is about, your lifetime? Like, what is your purpose? Because I think that when we ask ourselves that, and then allow ourselves and allow those around us to come to our own very authentic conclusions, that's how we get to move through life with a deeper level of integrity. and enjoy it more.
I think a large sector of the population, yeah, is traumatized and just surviving, right,
Yep.
across the globe. And, when we're in that survival mode, you wanna find ways to get in reality. And I think especially with the North American example, right, from where we grew up in, a lot of people dive into their work, right? I've seen, the workaholic thing
Mhm.
rampant, right? Whereas other parts of the world, brother, we both have traveled, work is a means to live the rest of their life. Whereas I would say like in North America, work is the thing that allows people to ignore their thoughts and minds.
Yeah.
Like when they don't want to be alone with their thoughts, but they can go work a 12-hour shift and they're so exhausted that they just come home and, couple of, dinner, TV and bed anyways. It's like they don't have
Yeah.
to sit there with their thoughts, with their trauma, with the things that they've gone through and coming to a realization about those things. And
Yeah.
is that by design? Again, let's just pose the question, is that on purpose? And
Yeah.
so when that's the case, you're so, hell bent on just distraction, in all of its ways. And especially now when we're adding in, add the telephones and telephones sound old, add the cell phones in and, the distraction on the apps, that's just another pacifier, right? Because all these addictions that you've mentioned, the nicotine or, caffeine or, marijuana or, porn,
Mhm.
and then add in the phone, social media, people say the doom scrolling. It's like that's another way to captivate your attention and your time and your energy and to sap it away from the things that we think that we're truly, or we hope that people realize they're truly here for, which is to like be a beautiful, powerful person and create a
Mhm.
cool life and create cool things with people you care about. Create meaning for yourself, right? What's the point of here? It's like the point is for you to create meaning for yourself, in my opinion, or, the things that
Yeah.
I've
I agree.
from my experiences, right? Yeah, it's like, my life, are people gonna remember me in 100 years? No. You know what I mean? But it's like, I'm gonna remember this life and this experiences, while I'm living it. So it's like create that meaning for myself now, um, is the conclusion that makes the most sense as far as I can see it, as we've posed these questions to ourselves. Yeah, brother, I just think that, especially when it comes to like these, the services where it's like these for-profit models, I'm like, yeah, again, yeah, it's like, do these people, some of these people truly have your best intentions at heart? And doctors really, a lot of these people have really gotten into these professions to try to help people, but that they can't get in the way of like the for-profit system when it comes to like the pharmaceutical companies. It's like, of course they want to sell more drugs and make more money. Of course they do, right? And so that creates that incentive for people to push them. And but again, it's not attacking the underlying symptoms of and underlying problems that most people are affecting themselves with. I think America too. It's like community is inconvenient, right? People say that, and so it's like when friends or people are
Wow.
going through something. What?
No, that's yeah, it's crazy to think that people would look at it that way. Community is inconvenient.
Well, I just think when it comes to the North American perspective, people view community as inconvenient because like, oh, I just want to sit at home
Yeah,
and like,
yeah,
just turn on Netflix,
yeah,
right? It's like when
well,
when
yeah,
your friend like needs you or when someone's is calling upon you, and
yeah,
people view community as inconvenient. But I'd argue that like, if your friend's going through something and they have a birthday party that you don't want to go to and you text last minute, it's like, oh, I don't want to go. But it's like that's the price we pay is like, giving your time to others that hopefully care about you. Like hopefully it's reciprocal, right? That community and affection. But I think that time spent with like loved ones, the family you choose, which is friends, and the family, hopefully your family, loves you too. I know every family has problems, mine included, but hopefully it's time well spent regardless, even if it's inconvenient. And, just better ways to try to solve the feeling. Cause for me personally too, y'all, like it was loneliness, right? I feel like I've just felt lonely, for a while, like misunderstood by everyone around me, especially as a child, misunderstood in large part for, my adulthood as well. And also, like my upbringing was like, okay, like just like wall off, like, my thoughts and feelings because like no one cares anyways, or like no one really, it's like when you're a kid and like people, the people treat you as a child, right? Like now with someone who has
mm,
thoughts and feelings and emotions and, it's just like, oh, like you're just a kid, like it doesn't matter. And, not to say that like I was, had a devastating childhood or nothing like that. Like it was fine. But I just always felt that, like I just keep all that stuff inside. Whereas
Mhm.
now it's like, again, use your discernment when it comes to sharing with people, right? But, it's like vulnerability is a superpower as well. And vulnerability with the right people is a weight. And it's like, and again, like finding those people in my life is such a beautiful thing. It's like, and I don't have to pay somebody to really like bare my soul and to like hopefully reach some positive conclusions about my own behavior and my own reactions, because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, like that therapist doesn't have to like live with me or interact with me or deal with me. You know what I mean? Like they're just like, Monday morning quarterbacking from the sidelines, where it's like, if it's like my friends and my family or like people that are actually interacting with how I behave and actually interacting with who I am as a person and my actions and the consequences of those actions, good or bad, like that's, who I'll listen to a little bit more and let more credence to, because number one, like they have a deep love for me. I'm not paying
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
and they're really there. Like again, and like the power of community. And again, it's inconvenient, right? But
Yeah.
and
They
again,
got
just
some
posing the
skin in the
question,
game.
like they got some skin in the game, right? And again, just
Mhm.
posing the question, is that a better avenue than the for-profit models that we've seen of like helping people with their mental health? I don't know, man. I don't know, but time will tell.
I think it's interesting when we talk about like I wanted to touch on how you discuss the workaholic kind of culture, especially in North America. And
Yeah,
it's an interesting one because it's such an individualistic culture, and one in which we use our work to define ourselves. I think that's why we get into that pattern of being a workaholism, because in other cultures where your job isn't what defines you, where maybe like your family connections, in more community-based cultures, maybe more Eastern, it's not just what you're doing for work is like the the pinnacle of like your self-definition. It's like your family connections, your friends, your social engagements, your community engagements. It's like there's a lot more to it, and maybe that kind of stuff. Maybe that's why, like when I have personally, traveled to Asia, for example, I feel a lot more, this is anecdotal and everything, but like just speaking personally, I feel a lot more happiness from people in general. And coming back to North America and just feeling this tension, this like so everybody's rushing around, speeding in their cars and, texting and driving and doing all this crazy stuff that is like so observably, obviously not in one's best interest. It's like, the fact that we have to be told, like, "Don't text and drive or you're gonna get a ticket." It's like, can't we just observe that texting and driving, and just as a little example here, can't we just observe that texting and driving is not in our best interest? Like, I used to be a firefighter. I went to many car accidents, sometimes fatal, that where texting and driving was involved, and it's like, "Guys, come on. This is observably true that this is not in our best interest to do this. Put the phone down." But it's like, again, just this, I don't know, that's kind of random, but, this, just
no,
like,
I get
yeah,
what I'm picking up what you're putting down.
just coming to observe, like, just yeah, and maybe that's my greater point here is, like, let's just like, if we're really looking at what is working best for us, like, let's just, like, develop greater skills of observation. Again, we like to call ourselves keen observers of life, and it's like, yeah, I mean, like, that's something I aspire to be, is a better and better observer of life, including myself, getting to observe my own thoughts, my own thought processes, so that I can be my own therapist. And really, like, just and what is that is like, meditation, getting better at zooming out, getting better at detaching from the thought patterns to recognize that, like, oh, they're not me, they never were, and then so I can observe them more objectively, more critically, more analytically, and see like what works and what doesn't. Well, staying in a negative thought loop, if I'm expecting, if I'm feeling anxious and I'm thinking anxious thoughts, then I start to notice like, oh, okay, well then I start to see things throughout my day that reinforce that, and then that becomes my whole day becomes an anxiety fest, and like if I don't do that, it changes, that is observably true in my experience. So now maybe I will try something new. And it's like that could have been communicated to me by a mental health professional or a coach. But you know, when I find it myself, it lands a lot more. And then as we're saying here, it's like, are we telling people what to do, or are we just being the example? I mean, I think it's so much more valuable when we're just walking that walk and we're living that example and people can see the change. And then they might ask some questions, and then they might really be ready to hear some answers when they're asking the questions from a place of deep and genuine curiosity, as has been the case a few times in my life.
Having the awareness, like you said, having the observational skills of recognizing like what is not serving us and then changing course. Oftentimes people know that, and again, if you're in the throes of addiction, like I'm not just like, oh, just like put down the drink. Like it's like I know it's
Yeah.
so much more harder than
Yeah.
that, right? But if someone's smoking cigarettes, it's like, they know it's bad for them. Again, how do you try to stop that? But I mean, what really switched a brain in me or switched something in me when I had issues with addictive tendencies in the past, and still do. It's not like, it's like I still got to fight that battle. I'm not saying that everything's fixed and whatever.
Mm.
What it's really like flipped a switch in my brain was that it's all a battle with my nervous system, right? This entire process. And when I'm
Mhm.
going to something, for me in the past, where there's like marijuana or whatever it was, porn, whatever the case was, it's like, oh, like that's just an adult version of a pacifier for me
Yeah.
to regulate my nervous system, whether it's out of, boredom or, I don't want to just sit here with my thoughts and be bored and sober. And so it's like, oh, I need something to just switch the game up, but again, it's like, that's just, yeah, a pacifier as an adult to regulate my nervous system, which never felt truly safe, never felt seen or, whatever the case is. And so I was like, oh, like I'm just like, like the issues of me as a child, like still carry into today. I just have different solutions. It's not the thumb in the
Yeah.
mouth or the pacifiers. It's like I'm just going for way worse things for myself to
Yeah.
calm myself down or just reach this level of like homeostasis with reality. And again, y'all, like easier said than done. I can just posing the questions of like, what's good for us, right?
Yeah.
And I knew that those things never were.
And I think that's a really great question to ask is like, do you think this is good for you? Do you think that this is any different than the pacifying tendencies from childhood? Because it's really the same thing. Because as far as I have observed, we were for the most part, we're just a bunch of children in running around in adult bodies. And that's again because of the trauma. And when we look at it from like that trauma perspective and that ego facets of ego parts perspective, survival mechanisms, like we are all stuck in our traumas from 4, 5, 7 years old, maybe a little bit later, but like for the most part in those early years. And that's why I mean I have observed in my own personal life many times, people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are behaving like 5-year-olds. And not as like some judgmental accusation. It's just the observation. I'm like, this is a direct parallel. This is obvious. There's such a connection here. And so we have all these things that are just socially acceptable. Like Terrence McKenna used to talk about like the socially acceptable addictions. You got some scotch over here, you got some TV over here. You're allowed. It's just like in George Orwell's 1984, like the drugs that are allowed by Big Brother, to keep the population again pacified. It's like just look at that and see like, is this serving me? Because ultimately, as you mentioned, the nervous system state, there's something in there that's not feeling safe and not feeling okay and is seeking relief from that, seeking relief from something internal in the external, which does not work. That again is observably true. Trying to solve your internal problems with something from the external does not work. We have to turn around, like turn the gaze inward and go in and sit in that fire and feel that pain in order to release it and recognize that it's not true anymore and that we don't have to keep stuck in those loops. But it takes the maturity to focus the awareness and the intention inwardly in order to get that done, in order to do that work. And that, that motivation has to come authentically. It has to come from inside. It can't just be told to you like, hey, you should do this. You have to be able to, through your own skills of observation, see, hey, something isn't working here. Everyone, and like, not only is it not working for me, but I can look to the outside world and see like nothing is working for anyone else, because everybody's sick, everybody's getting in car accidents, everybody's addicted to like 4 or 5 different substances, whether they acknowledge it or not. Again, the nicotine, the alcohol, sugar, screens, porn, all these things. Again, the Krishnamurti quote, "The sick society," because it's like, and then recognizing that. Oh, as a side note, it's kind of funny going against the grain, and like doing this work. It's like, now then that means like I'm going to stand out. Oh, now I'm the crazy one. I'm the weird one. But again, do I want to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society? Because it's like everyone now thinks, I'm the weird one for not drinking alcohol, for not taking any drugs, for being, for practicing meditation. It's like, if that makes me crazy, then I'd rather be crazy than sane, because to me, like everyone else we can observe everyone else engaging in these behaviors that are clearly not working. Because I mean, go around any city in Canada or North or the United States and look at people driving. Everybody's texting and driving. That's my one of my favorite examples. So I keep coming back to it, and it's like it's not working. So like,
No, bro,
observe.
you've seen the consequences of it too. Like you
Yeah,
said.
and I've seen, yeah, in my old job, I've seen the consequences of it. So it's like we can see that it's not working. Observe that. Observe it's not working for anyone else. Observe that it hasn't been working for ourselves up until this point, and then go, okay, well, what can we do differently? Trying to solve an internal problem with an external solution does not work. So let's turn around, let's look inward, let's do that work. And there's so much out there to support that. There are fairly realized or even self-realized coaches and therapists out there. There are an immense amount of written works by realized beings, like works of Eckhart Tolle, Michael Singer. Like there's so much good stuff out. Don Miguel Ruiz. There's so much good stuff out there to support an inward journey. Because and yeah, and it's like, and as we've been saying, we can't tell people to do that work. We can just pose those questions that hopefully ignite a little spark of curiosity that will then have someone arriving at those conclusions themselves and starting to ask those questions in order to try and arrive at more conclusions to further that journey. Because that's when it really takes off, is when that very organic curiosity develops. Because it's like, oh yeah, it can be so much better. And then just to lend our own experiences here, like to share my own experience personally. It was just like I had no idea that the baseline could be so much better. Like I used to be somebody who was like, I didn't understand people that didn't drink alcohol. I was like, what's the point? What's the point? Like, life is hard. Alcohol is one of the things that makes it a little less hard. It's weird. I was very uncomfortable around people that didn't drink. It didn't make any sense to me until I got there myself, and I was like, oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Your everyday, your baseline can be so much higher. It is like that the idea of dropping down into a dark and negative vibration like alcohol is one of the most insane propositions anyone can put before me. At the same time as I still fully understand, because I remember what it was like to be down there and just trying to get through the day and feel better. So like, understanding it, but then like coming to the other side of like a deeper understanding where it's like, this actually doesn't make any sense, and it never did from that perspective. But yeah, here we are. So yeah, man, live the example. Be the change we wish to see in the world, you know what I mean?
Yeah, folks, if you like what you heard today, supported us, hopefully, yeah, it just made you think. Please support us in any of the ways that free. Like, comment, share, subscribe, engage with us, ask us a question. We'd love to hear from you. Pose us a question. And yeah, yeah, we'll catch you next time on Oneself. Unless Adam, you have any closing thoughts?
No, I'm good, man. Let's leave it there.
Cool. All right, we'll catch you next week, y'all.